Okay, Miami-Dade students, welcome to your first day of Digital Imaging Fundamentals. I know some of you guys probably have some Photoshop experience, and some of you probably have never used Photoshop. Now, this class, we do start off pretty basic, and then as we go on, you guys are going to be learning different techniques and tools that are going to get a lot more complicated as we go on in the semester. So this first one, I did make this very simple for the students that are brand new to Photoshop. So we won't be using a lot of tools today, just a few, and your assignment is not going to be overly difficult. You're going to be making two different posters. Normally we do them for the college. We pick events from the college, but unfortunately, because the college is obviously not having on-ground classes or any events right now, we are going to just do them for the city of Miami for their yearly events. So I'm going to show you an example of one that a student had done before. This is one that a Miami-Dade student did for the basketball game they had at campus. Now, the assignment, you are just going to be using line to portray feelings, emotions, or the mood of the event you're doing. It's going to be very challenging because obviously you're going to want to use curved lines or other types of lines, and that can be really, really difficult to have those kind of limitations. So here you can see for the basketball event, they used the lines to give it the feeling of the net, the basketball net. So they weren't completely literal. I would prefer you not to be completely literal. They were pretty imaginative here, but you can still get the idea of the way that the basketball net is with the smaller squares. And a really, really nicely done design. They use nice hierarchy where you have the name, the title larger, and then the other information just a little bit smaller. And anytime we design something, we want to make sure that there is a way for the viewer to determine what is the first thing I should look at. Is it color that you bring it and you make it more bold so your eye goes there right away, or the size? People tend to look at the biggest thing first, or the placement on the canvas. So you will have some limitations. I did put instructions in Blackboard also that tell you a little bit about the instructions, but basically you're going to be using a limited color scheme, and it's going to be a double split complement. I'll talk about that in a minute. You are going to be using just a very few Photoshop tools, and you're only working with line to express your idea. So I just chose this one because I thought it was nicely done. So there's that example. And then since we aren't going to go with the things that are happening in on the campus, I put a link there for the city events. So there's just some of the city events in January, February. You can pick any time of the year. There's obviously lots of events that happen. There's a boat show, the Art Deco weekend. So you might want to look through there, pick one that you think is going to be appropriate. I think I'm going to do the boat show here when I start this project. And then our color scheme is going to be the double split complement color scheme. That's a very easy one because it just forms an X on the color wheel. And then you want to make sure that the two colors are touching on each side. If they aren't touching and to form different color schemes, that would not necessarily be appropriate for this project. So you pick your base color, you pick the color across from it, which is obviously the complement, and then you pick one that's touching with its complement. So they always are going to touch. They'll touch here, and they'll touch here, and then make sure it's X. Okay. And make sure when you're looking up color wheels, because there's 3 different types of color wheels, we're going to use the traditional color wheel. So you just have to type in traditional color wheel, or you can use this one that is also located on the Blackboard in the week that I have selected. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. Let me shut all this stuff off. All right, I'll drag that to the trash. And let me just give you a basic run through of how Photoshop works. I'm going to leave this color scheme here because we might want to refer to it later. Anytime you want to have a layer not show, you just hit this little eyeball, and then that layer is still there. If I turn it back on, then it'll come back on. So Photoshop does work on layers. So as the layers come in, they're going to be stacking up here. The top layer obviously is what you're going to be able to see, and then you'll only be able to see the ones underneath if you have a transparent area. How you know you have a transparent area in Photoshop is the checkerboard pattern. If you have a checkerboard pattern, you definitely have a transparent area. So when I put this on, there's no transparent area there. If I had layers below, I wouldn't be able to see them. All right, so let me go ahead and start this by making a blank layer. So now I have a blank layer, there's no information there. So when I turn on this layer, you're going to see it even though both layers are selected. You know Photoshop, a Photoshop layer is selected because it's in the light gray. The light gray means that layer is selected. We can select two layers at once, and we'll be doing that in the future. But right now, the layer that's selected is going to be in the light gray. I'll go ahead and shut that off again. So how Photoshop works, you have your toolbar right here. These are all the different tools that we'll be using over the course of this semester. And then if you look at the toolbar, if you look down in the corner, there's a little arrow, and if you click and hold, it's going to give you even more tools. So Photoshop is a very complex program, it has lots of things to offer. So we have our original tool and then sub-tools there. We also have our menus palette, which is up here on the top. So we have things that you'll drop down menus that you'll be able to see up there that we'll be using at different times. First thing you want to do when you open up Photoshop, mine was already open, but you want to make sure it's the appropriate size. So the way that we're going to do that is you're going to go up to where it says image, you're going to image size, and we do want to make this 8 by 10. So right now mine is not necessarily 8 by 10, it's and so I'm going to increase it by putting 8 in width and 10 in height. And then my resolution, I'm going to put it at 72 dpi or pixels per inch because we're just going to use it for the web. If we're going to print, you do have to have it 300 dpi, otherwise it's going to be all blurry when you print. So when you open up your image size, you're going to go to width and height. It's going to be 8 by 10 or close to it if it's or 8 by 11, right in there. That's fine. And then, but the most important thing is the resolution. You need to make it 72 for web or 300 for printing if you're going to print anything out. And then go ahead and hit OK, and it's readjusted my size of my screen. So if I want to see everything now that it's gotten bigger, I need to hold down Command and hit minus on the keyboard, and then it'll make this much smaller. So Command minus shrinks your image, Command plus makes your image bigger. And then if I hold down the space bar while I have a tool selected, it turns into a hand and allow me to move around. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute when we actually have objects here. So I'm going to do the boat show, so I'm going to come up with some kind of wave pattern. We want to think about how line can be used. So just quickly, just made a blank layer there. Obviously, a straight line gives us one kind of look. If we have a wavy line, that's going to be more like, you know, the ocean. If you have a zigzag line, that could be kind of energy or electrical. So we got to think about how we're going to use those lines and how we're going to create different images with them. And then also, you know, a bolder line is going to give you a very different look than a really thin line. So just play around with that a little bit when you're thinking about how you're going to do design. So I just take this layer, I don't want it anymore, right down here to the trash can and throw it out. So here we go. I'm going to go and I'm going to go to my rectangular marquee tool, the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to go ahead and click and draw the start of my line. It's just a little tiny thin triangle. So I'm going to go back to my color palette real quick, and I'm going to see what color I want to use here. I'll just use the one that I already have selected. I think that'll be easier. Red, red-violet, green, and green-yellow. Since this is a boat show, I probably should have used the blue. Actually, well, no, I'll just leave it green. Well, no, I'll make it blue, because you're right. If I don't make it blue, it's not going to look enough like water. So I'll use blue-green. These are the colors I'm going to use. So for this project, I'm going to change my color here to a different color so you guys can see it easily. I'll go with purple here. All right, so the color scheme I'm going to use, this is the original one that's just showing you example, but I'm going to just do a quick new one just to show you which color I'm going to use. Since I'm doing the boat show, I do want blue because I want to have the water be blue. So I'm going to use blue and orange because they're complements, and I have to do two that touch. I'll do green and red orange. Okay, so these will be the two. These two and these two. Those will be the four colors I use. Orange, red orange, blue, and blue green. Okay, we just have to remember that. Let me take these two layers, throw them in the trash. Now we're ready to start. Turn that off. So now again, make sure I have my thin my thin rectangle. I'm going to use blue because I know I want the water. So I'll go up here and change my, there we go, blue. You can use a tint, tone, or shade if you want to. So a tint is you get closer to the white, a tone is the gray, and then a shade is when you use black in a color. But let me just go with more of the regular blue. Now, anytime you have an active selection in Photoshop, so that's what this is, the little marching ants are an active selection. Anything we tell it to is only going to happen in that confined area. So I'm going to go to my paint bucket tool. Your paint bucket tool is located under the gradient tool. So for most of you, when you go in Photoshop, you can see the gradient tool. You're going to click and hold, and then there's the paint bucket tool. Now, when I select my color, I'm going to go over here to the swatches. If you double click on here, it'll bring up a color picker, and then, or you can do it over here. This changes the color. This selects the color. So you have to click over here to select the color. So anywhere I'm going in here selects the color. This changes the color. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, but it's green. I didn't select it. I've got to go ahead and select it first. So go ahead. I'm going to make it blue. Click to select. Now it's blue here, so I know this is the color that's going to come out of the paint bucket tool. Go to the paint bucket tool, and I do need to have my blank layer with nothing on it. And then I go ahead and touch, and then the blue is in the triangle here. So once I do that, I do a Command D to get rid of those marching ants. I go back to the top tool. The top tool is my move tool. Click on the move tool, and I click on the object. It moves anywhere I want it to move in the space. So if you don't like the size of your object, maybe you want a bit longer, I can do the Command T to get the transform tool on. And then if I just click on this middle little box here, I can stretch it. And then if it's too thick, I can shrink it here. I can also, if I want to change it and distort it, I can hold down Shift and then stretch it, and then it doesn't shrink or change the whole thing. Because if I try to just go here and try to change it, it's going to get proportional. But if I hold down Shift, I can just go ahead and click on that. Oh, I'm having a little bit of trouble here. All right, stop. All right, I'm having a little bit of trouble. I'm not sure why I'm having such trouble. There we go. Now, so as you can see, I can just go ahead and change that shape. But I got to be holding down Shift on the keyboard. All right, here we go. Now, this is going to be my wave. I'm going to go ahead and change this to a wave. I can also think about what else I'm doing. It's the boat show, so maybe I want to have some objects that kind of have a feeling of a boat. And then, or I could build a boat. Sometimes people do that. And then I'll also need my text. Now we're just about out of time because I can only save 15 minutes on each one of these videos, or it's hard to get the Blackboard to post them. So I'm going to stop here because I'm at 13 minutes, and then I'm going to design the rest in the next video.